I hear the sirens now. I'd hoped it would have taken them longer. I didn't call it in, so it must have been one of the neighbors. I left you while sitting in the hotel, contemplating on whether to seek out the old man's daughter or not. The motel room mini fridge actually had small bottles of water and vodka in it, so that may have influenced my decision a little. I decided I would. I was going to get some sleep, leave in the morning, and try to get some damn answers. Thankfully, I barricaded the door before I had a few shots. I woke up the next morning fairly early and rolled out of bed. Nothing seemed amiss, so I hopped in the shower and got ready for the car ride ahead. I moved the desk away from the door and opened it up. I didn't think it was going to happen, but it also didn't surprise me as much as it should have. The door had deep slashes on it, and the outside window was smeared in black goo. I tried pushing it out of my mind and just briskly jogged to the front office. I told the lady a homeless man or someone tried attacking my door last night and left it a mess. She apologized profusely, and I feel kind of bad for that. And she told me I'd have a free 3-night stay at any time. I thanked her and walked out to my car. My driver window had the black goo on it as well, but there were no scratches. Maybe that thing was smarter than I thought. As long as I couldn't see it during the day, and it couldn't hurt me, then I had the upper hand. I ended up getting an address online for the old man's daughter, so I plugged it into my GPS and started off. It was actually only 2-ish hours away from where I was. I started down the road towards my destination. It took me all of 2 hours to get there. It was located in a little town, if you could even call it that. I would say a village, actually. I bet it only took 2 minutes to drive from one end to the other. Her house was right in the middle, surrounded by a junkyard on one side and a church on the other. It wasn't a bad house. Actually, none of them around the area looked too bad. I parked on the street and gathered my thoughts, then walked up to the door. I knocked a few times, waited a few seconds, then heard the locks turn. The door opened to a nice-looking older lady, maybe in her early 50s. She greeted me with a smile, but I think she could tell how freaked out I was. Her smile turned into a look of worry. "You moved into the house, didn't you?" I didn't know what to tell her. I don't know how she knew. "I can tell. You've seen her too, haven't you?" "I have seen her. The girl in my cameras. I've seen her and whatever the hell she turned into, and the thing that ripped my house apart. I don't even know what the hell it is, and..." She stopped me. "Stop? I know. You're not the first person to look for me, and you're not going to be the last. Yes, I am. I have to stop whatever the hell this is. I bought that house to start over, and I'm not letting that creature She stopped me again. Her, not some creature. Her name is Delilah. She was my sister. I stood there with my mouth practically on the ground. Did she just say that this thing is her sister? Listen, I'll let you come in and I'll tell you everything. As long as you just sit here, you listen, and then you leave. I'll let you ask a few questions, but that's it. I immediately agreed, and she let me inside. I sat in her living room, a few cats running around the house. It was a decent place, cozy, and seemed like she'd built a nice little home. She was in the kitchen for a little while. I could hear glasses clinking and the kettle starting to whistle. About 5 minutes passed when she came into the room with tea and some cookies. It really reminded me of going to my grandmother's house as a kid. She sat down and took a sip, and then proceeded to throw everything at me. So, it started with my parents, my mother and father. They got married young, built the house, and had us not long after. It was all very quick, but they were in love. They kept everything a surprise, and one of the biggest surprises was that they were going to have twins. It was perfect for what my father had planned. All along, we found out. I was sitting at the edge of the couch, hanging on every word. My father was a part of a cult. He would have called it a faith group, but it was bullshit. It was a cult through and through. It wasn't anything based off of modern religions either. It was very primal. It was based on some pagan, some Wiccan, some demonic. I'm not even sure about it all. I didn't look too far into it. I had some investigations done, but I dropped everything and decided to get on with my life. I was getting confused. It felt like she was going too fast and jumping with the story. Oh, I'm sorry I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyhow, he was a part of this cult and hid it very well from my mother and us girls. Life was basically normal, with our father having meetings in the garage every Sunday and Wednesday nights. He would have a group over, and they would read and sing, I guess you could call it. Sounded more like chanting to me. They would take a few hours and then shuffle out. I'd been in the garage before, but nothing ever seemed too bad. Nothing too evil. That is, until one night my sister was taken. We were about 12 at the time. I woke up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat. I went downstairs to get a drink and saw the garage door open. It seemed weird, and it wasn't a usual night for my dad's group. I decided to go out and saw the bench moved out of where it used to be. You've probably seen the same thing, I know. I ventured down the stairs and down the dark dirt corridor. I was shaking, listening to her speak. She had hit every nail on the head. I made my way down the hall and saw there, in the middle of my room, my sister, bound on the floor surrounded by people in black robes. She was sleeping almost, I think, and almost looked like she was levitating just above the ground. Two men were above her near the ceiling, holding a pot of what I learned was hot tar. Some of the men started to chant, and my sister started changing. She was convulsing, moving in ways that shouldn't be humanly possible. I screamed. The men stopped chanting. They all looked at me. My sister started making noises I thought only large animals could make. All of the men turned their attention to her, and then to the men above. They poured the tar on her. I still hear the noise every time I close my eyes. I ran upstairs and outside, down the street, and never looked back. I got lost in the woods, and the police found me hours later. My mother found out everything. She took me and we moved away for a long time. She couldn't contact the police. They would have called her crazy, and my father's followers would have found us. I moved back here, years later, close enough to keep an eye on things. My father died, and I hoped no one would ever buy the house, but they did. Things happen, and that house will never go away. My sister is stuck there forever. I think she'd stuck between the world of the living and the dead or something. I don't know what happened to her, but I mourn her every day. I promise, no matter how hard you try, no matter what you try to do, nothing will get rid of that house and its horror. I tried to ask a question, but she wouldn't let me. She kept holding up her hand. I'm sorry, but you need to leave now. I hate bringing this up, and I'm going to be back on meds now because of this. It's not your fault. Please, just leave the house and try to warn anyone who dares try to take it back. I left. She didn't look good, and I had found a new conviction. I was going to get rid of the house. I felt sick listening to her story, and the only thing I could think of was to get rid of the house. I drove straight back, stopping only to get gas. I got back just before dark. I went back inside the house, grabbed a few of my valuables and clothes, and brought them back out to the car. When I stopped to get gas, I didn't only get it for my car. I walked inside and doused everything I could in gasoline. I trailed it outside into my front yard, then lit the match. I hear the sirens now. I'd hoped it would have taken them longer. I didn't call it in, so it must have been one of the neighbors. I saw a few of them coming out of their houses when I got in my car. One stopped me and handed me an envelope. Then I sped off. I'm in the hotel room now. The same hotel as last time. And just got through the envelope's contents. It was 4 pictures. Each one of them, the house was on fire. It looked the exact same as I just left it, enveloped in fire. Next to the house, a group of robed men stood, alongside that tarred beast. In front of them was what I could only assume was the owner of the house at the time. Each one was dated differently. It had happened once a year. Every year since the old man died. I moved the mattress and bed frame in front of the door. I don't know that it's going to work this time. If I make it out alive tonight, I'll let you all know. I won't go down without a fight.